Hello from my small part of this great country here in North Queensland. I'm Faye Hall and I'm mother of 5 children, stepmother of 4 children, and I write historical romantic suspense stories set in the rural areas near where I grew up just south of Townsville. Each of my books focus on not only an intense love story but also some dramatic crime or deception that pulls the characters together. I write the kind of stories I write mainly because of the Agatha Christie movies I used to watch with my mum when I was little, and I always wanted a little bit more of a love story that went along with the crime. And you can see that in my latest release, Scandalous Behaviour. 2 characters are drawn together by a very tragic event of the death of the nanny on one of the estates. And they are forced together and faced with the near impossible task of trying to find who was responsible. And instead, they kind of find each other. So I tend to explore a different side of history in North Queensland that isn't often read about in the history books. And I'd love you to come along and join me on exploring a very romantic side to North Queensland history.
Once upon a time. Welcome to Australian Book Lovers, your destination for imagination.
A big warm welcome to everyone and a huge thank you for joining us once again for the Australian Book Lovers podcast. Our mission, as always, is to bring fabulous Australian and Indigenous literature spanning a whole range of genres to book lovers all around the globe, as well as fantastic resources and information for passionate authors looking to write their next bestseller. I am Darren Kazenko, science fiction and horror author, reader, of course, and one of your hosts and co-founders of the Australian Book Lovers, coming to you today from Corner Country.
And I'm Veronica Strachan, aka V.E. Patton, fantasy, memoir and picture book writer, reader, and your other co-founder and host, coming to you today from Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung country.
And we are coming to you, everybody, I suppose, on episode number 72. So we're still moving along. So very exciting.
We are still moving along.
Yes. So quite interesting things to talk about this episode. But I thought I'll just start and let you know that apparently the number 72 is considered to be a very lucky number indeed. Mm-hmm. It is also said to associate, or at least be associated with, abundance, prosperity, and good health, and is considered the number of humanitarianism. So that's pretty cool. So that's a good start to episode number 72. What about when it comes to the cracking pace of bingo?
Indeed, this is a really boring one because 72, it's just 6 dozen. So yeah, ordinary.
Well, okay.
Nothing specky. Sorry for bingo callers. Could you think of something a little bit more exciting?
Yeah, that's you're not supposed to bring maths into bingo.
No.
I know you're using numbers, but it defeats the purpose of the fun calls.
Yeah.
However, did you know in the year of 1972 in Australia, there is some very interesting stuff that's happened. In fact, it was, I'll start with a couple of things. And on the 3rd of June, Douglas Nicholls became the very first Indigenous Australian to be knighted.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was a good year for Douglas. And Kerry Ann Wells earned Australia's first Miss Universe crown in Dorado, Puerto Rico. So there we go. Started to take on the world there in 1972 when it comes to, the Miss Universe. I don't even know if does that still happen now? I have no idea. I've never seen one in my life.
No, it's Miss Congeniality, where Sandra Bullock says, what is it? It's a scholarship program. I don't think that's true. I honestly am not sure.
Yes, and I'm not even going to pretend I know anything about that world. But there was a couple of things that happened in 1972 that I think really highlight that life can be stranger than fiction. Mm-hmm. And ironically, one happened in Victoria and one originated in Adelaide. So both of our fair cities are representing some pretty interesting tales for 1972. And I think these are, they're not pleasant stories, but they're fascinating. And I wasn't aware of either. So starting in Victoria, you're probably aware of it, but the Faraday school kidnapping.
Yes, I do remember that vaguely, yep.
6 pupils and their teacher were kidnapped for
Yeah.
a $1 million ransom. Now, at the time, the Victorian government actually said it would pay the ransom. Now, the victims did escape, though, and obviously the criminals were captured and they went to trial and were convicted. However, one of the kidnappers somehow escaped and then went on to kidnap another teacher, but this time with 9 pupils. And he was eventually captured, convicted, and sentenced. So definitely no smart cells there, or when I say cells, brain cells in those criminals, like one to doing it in the first place and getting caught and then thinking that it would work a second time.
It would work a second time. Yeah,
Absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah.
So for me, that's a little bit almost like truth stranger than fiction. But then, how about on the 15th of November, the very first aircraft hijacking in Australia, which was the Ansett Airlines Flight 232, which departed from Adelaide. It was actually heading for Alice Springs. Now, the irony is, you can tell how much times have changed, because apparently there was a male passenger who got onto the flight or boarded the flight with a concealed sawn-off .22 rifle and a sheath knife strapped to his leg.
Strapped to his leg.
So definitely no metal detectors back then, I don't think, or if they did have them, they weren't working. So that's crazy enough. Now, obviously he, once the plane was in flight mode and he tried to hijack the plane, but basically they were coming into landing and the pilot said, well, no, I can't talk now, we're landing the plane. So they told him he needs to sit down for the landing. He needs to return to his seat. So he did do that. He returned to his seat like a good passenger. Now, then when they got to the ground, apparently he explained to whoever it was that was negotiating that he didn't want money or anything like that. What he wanted to do was he wanted to commit suicide in a spectacular way, and that way was by parachuting into a remote location and surviving for as long as he could before dying. To facilitate this, he wanted a light aircraft to parachute in a jumpsuit. So they actually did organise a pilot, and basically the pilot volunteered himself and an aircraft, and an undercover police constable was posing as a navigator. Now, somewhere along the way, things got a little bit heated, and so basically the hijacker was shot. He was shot, let's have a look here. He was shot in the right shoulder and left arm, and then he basically ran off and then committed suicide. But truth is definitely stranger than fiction there. To hijack a plane because you want to be taken by another plane to be parachuted out and to land in a remote area.
Goodness.
Now, I don't know what he was thinking because, a 1.5 hour drive from Adelaide, you're in a remote area.
Yeah.
So, but nonetheless, so that was a little bit of a strange thing there. Also, on the 1st of December, to go back to a bit of fun, now we already did the Miss Universe, but we also had Belinda Green crowned as Miss World in London. And that was
I do remember that.
Yeah, so basically Australia winning 2 of the most important beauty contests in 1 year. So 72 is definitely a good number for fashion. Now, the health warning, smoking is a health hazard, also became compulsory on cigarette packets, and the controversial soap opera number 96 debuted on television. So I guess that was controversial for its nudity, if I remember correctly. And I'll finish it off with, as far as inventions, how's this for another almost stranger than fiction? The power board was invented by Peter Talbot.
There you go.
While working at Canberra.
Obviously, that person needs a gold medal because, hey, I have lots of power boards.
Yes, well, the world has lots of power boards. But at the time, Canberra was so far more interested, apparently, in immediate commercial release and forgot to patent it. And so they never received any royalties from what has something that is now globally a standard feature of basically just about every home on the planet.
Very dodgy.
Talk about missing such a fantastic opportunity. But that is a little bit of a glimpse into Australia life 1972. But I thought those couple of stories from Adelaide and Victoria were quite interesting.
Yeah, and it's not sad, but it's interesting that I'm starting to remember those from, real life rather than reiteration or, written up in the paper. And talking about things that I remember, I've got, as I mentioned last episode, there were many Fs in the Australian National University's fabulous meanings and Australian idioms. So have you heard of flat out like a lizard drinking?
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
So this is being extremely busy at top speed, and it is, of course, a wordplay on 2 different meanings of the standard English flat out, literal sense being to lie fully stretched out. And the figurative sense means as fast as possible. So the phrase alludes to the rapid tongue movement as well of a drinking lizard. It's sometimes shortened as in we're flat out like a lizard trying to meet the deadline, and it was first recorded in the 1930s. So there you go. It's been around for a while.
It's been around as long as I can remember. But the funny thing is, I've never seen a lizard drinking.
No.
I've seen the lizards run.
Yeah,
I've seen them,
flat
stick their
out, just
tongue
enjoying
out.
the sunshine. But yeah. There you go. All right, now I have 2 more Fs for you. One is, in fact, a West Australian specific F, which is the Fremantle Doctor. Have you heard of the Fremantle Doctor?
No, not off the top of my head. I mean, it does sound a little bit familiar, but I couldn't tell you what it means.
Oh, there you go. We spent a couple of years over in Fremantle when I was doing a project for the health department over there, and Fremantle Doctor is the cool sea breeze that brings relief on a summer's day, and it's this wind that blows inland, being a really welcome feature of the climate in Western Australia's southwest. So like Fremantle, many towns have given it a name, and it actually it is amazing. So in Victoria, in Melbourne, we would have days and days of late 30s, early 40s, and people would be just, like a lizard flat out without the drinking, and it would be just scorching and humid and hideous. In Western Australia, they often would have that really hot day, but the doctor would come in, the Fremantle Doctor, the cool breeze comes in, and, the last part of the day, and it just takes the temperature down and is fantastic. So, yeah, the Fremantle Doctor.
Well, I guess we've got something similar here on the mid-coast with the climate changing, we don't seem to be having those long weeks of 38, 42s. But when we are in a position of being baked like a pizza, at some point that the ocean breeze comes in the evening, and I think one of the nicknames for it down this way is God's air conditioner.
Oh, so there you go.
Open the windows, God's air conditioner has just got turned on. And yes, it's but I like the Doctor one better.
The Doctor is good, recorded from the late 1870s. And it's interesting, they reckon the term may derive from a figurative application of doctor in the West Indies to a cool sea breeze, which usually prevails during part of the day in summer, and in South Africa, a strong blustery southeast wind prevailing at the Cape. And it really comes from doctor being any agent that gives or preserves health, and you can see the reason behind that, so that's a good thing. The final F that I am going to share is a furphy. Have you heard of a furphy?
Yes, indeed. And probably been responsible for more than one.
There you go. So a furphy, for those who don't know it, is a rumour or false report. It's an absurd story. So, if you're telling a furphy, you really are telling a bit of a fib or a lie, in case people don't know what a fib is. So furphy comes from the name of a firm, J. Furphy and Sons Proprietary Limited, who operated a foundry at Shepparton in Victoria, and they manufactured water carts, the name Furphy appearing on these carts. And they reckon that the term probably originated at the Broadmeadows Army Camp in Melbourne as a transfer from the name of the carts to the typical gossip of soldiers at sites serviced by the carts during the period of the First World War, and it was first recorded in 1915. So really, it's that gossip around the water cooler, but the original.
Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
I never would have picked it as coming from a water cart situation in the First World War.
Water cart, yeah. Because I often wondered because I knew about furphy water carts, because I do like, looking for a little bit of junk, as you know, from the olden times. But yeah, I didn't realise that it was really gossip around the water cooler, but a rumour or false report. So there you go. If someone's telling a furphy, they're probably spinning you a yarn, taking you for a ride, any of those kind of things. So there you are. Thank you very much to the Australian National University. Once again, we're up to F.
Well, it's lucky that I suppose there is another F that's used a lot in slang in Australia, but we probably can't do that one. But,
no.
It made me think, it's always struck me as really, funny, odd, peculiar, I guess, that if you do, F, exclamation mark, star, K, that's okay in a publication. But isn't that then trickery? Because if it's, let's say, if it's an offensive word, then it could follow that it's an offence to say it. Well, isn't the publication tricking you into saying it internally? And tricking you into an offence?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've always thought it's funny.
Could be.
You can't say it, can't write it, but you can actually make the person say it anyway. But
Interesting.
Interesting. Yes, the big F, yes. But
Yeah.
anyway, well, episode 72, we've got so much coming ahead. How about, before we do anything else, we jump into a very little bit of news.
Yes. Bring it on.
Okay, so a little bit of a little new segment for episode 72, but one thing I'd like to let all of our listeners and writers out there know about, and that is the 2023 Calibra Essay Prize, which is now open for entries. Now, this is by the Australian Book Review. So, open for entries from the 14th of October, so obviously currently, and entries close on the 30th of December 2022. Now, the prize money is $7,500, so I think it's one of the more prestigious, or one of the most prestigious competitions in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it is a non-fiction, so you need to just write obviously non-fiction entry between 2,000 and 5,000 words. Now, when it comes to entry fees, if you are an ABR or Australian Book Review subscriber, entry fee is $20. Now, there is no limit to how many entries pop in, but each entry does require a separate entry fee and form. Now, if you're a non-ABR subscriber, the entry fee is $30. However, all non-subscribers that do enter the contest will automatically receive 4-month digital access to the Australian Book Review magazine free of charge. So that's fantastic. Now, obviously, that is, if you just visit the Australian Book Review website, you'll see it there. That is the 2023 Calibra Essay Prize, but of course, there'll be a link in the show notes. A couple of quick things I wanted to just let everyone know about. When it comes to Australian books, it's been quite an interesting couple of things that have popped up in my news feed, and that one is that Barefoot Kids by Scott Pape, who I understand is also known as the Barefoot Investor.
Yes.
So he's written a Barefoot Kids, which is about financial advice and activities for kids. Well, according to the Nielsen Book Scan, Barefoot Kids has basically become the fastest selling book by an Australian author since BookScan records began in 2002.
Yes, absolutely. So he was at the Macedon Writers Festival. He was in the very first session, I think, with Alison Lester. So, who writes picture books, writes and draws picture books. So what happened is that these two were there, and you'd think, why would you put the Barefoot Investor with a picture book writer? Well, Alison wrote this book called Are We There Yet? So Scott and his family went on a tour around Australia. They left Victoria. They live just not far from me in the Macedon Ranges. Left Victoria to do the tour of Alison's book, Are We There Yet? Which is, again, another classic. So around they went and ended up in a place that Scott was thinking, why are we driving to there? But no, his young daughter insisted it was in the book. They had to go. So they were visiting all the places. But it was quite funny in the session at the Macedon Writers Festival where Alison said, oh, I'm really sorry, we didn't actually go there. But I had to put it in the book because it was balancing out the tour around Australia. So that was pretty funny.
Oh, there you go. Well, we got to go discover somewhere beautiful, and even if it was based on, shall we say, a slight furphy.
Indeed, it was based on a slight furphy. But what I really liked about this gentleman, about Scott Pape, is that he gave in his financial license to now do some work for a not-for-profit, a financial counselling service, where he and other people do try and support people, particularly victims of domestic violence or people that have become homeless, and how they can work with their financial institutions and accountants and all those kind of things to get themselves back on their feet. So he was writing this book as he was going around Australia, and he was asking his kids to read it and to give him an idea of, was it any good? And he said it was quite funny. His son said to him, Dad, I've got some notes. I need to tell you, I can see what you're trying to do here. It's just not funny. And so he had to take out what he thought was a really good joke about some particular area. So yes, his kids were great critique partners.
But
consequently, the book sounds like
dad jokes.
Yes, they didn't appreciate his dad jokes, but it was written for kids, so he said, okay, it's got to go.
Oh, well, huge congratulations, Scott. And what an amazing achievement. But, already was an amazing achievement with the Barefoot Investor, but now with Barefoot Kids, so all the strength to him.
Yeah, it was good fun. But he was very good to listen to.
And speaking of achievements and going gangbusters, I just wanted to also let everyone know that, episode 71, our previous episode, we had the pleasure of talking with none other than Chris Hammer regarding his book, The Tilt, and I read that it debuted at number 4 in the charts in October. So
that's great.
What a way to come out swinging for the stars. That's amazing.
Yes, very good. And of course, are you done with the news?
I was about to say, and that is all my little news for this episode, because I think we've got a really cool cafe session coming up.
We do, in fact, have a really cool cafe, but also stay tuned for our interviews, because we have a double interview happening. Yes, so we have Emily Gale and Nina Kenwood. So, again, fabulous to chat to. But in the meantime, the Readers Cafe was super special.
Well, let's go in and sip on a cuppa and maybe chat about some of the fantastic new titles that are appearing on the website, and maybe even a special guest reviewer or two. Let's go. So, Veronica, I'm not sure what cafe you're in. I'm about to do a road trip, I've walked to all places in Melbourne in the next couple of days. So my little cafe is actually, one of the Roadhouse cafes on a dusty highway somewhere, somewhere between here and the great state of Victoria. But please do tell me a little bit about the wonderful guests that are going to be joining us for coffee shortly.
Yes, well, I don't think they'll be joining us for coffee.
Should I say maybe
I reckon
milkshake?
I have to go hot chocolates with marshmallows, or actually, they do like smoothies. None of them like fizzy drinks. So as you can imagine from all of that, they are minors. So they're young kids, and these are 2 grandnieces and a grandnephew of mine. So they stayed with me over the weekend, and they absolutely love books. I've got an absolutely classic photo of young Scout in her basketball uniform with the basketball beside her, but with her nose buried in a book as she sits on the sidelines waiting for her turn. So they do love their books, which is it's a classic. And they do know that Auntie Ronnie sends them lots of books, and that's usually what they're going to get from me for presents. They did have a lovely time, asked me to read stories when they were going to bed, as I said, staying at my place, and they wanted me to read the Chickabella stories, which of course are the stories that I wrote, and their big cousin Cassie illustrated for them, so that was very nice. So we did read the Chickabellas, and we had a lovely time. I just said, the Chickabella stories are good. It was good fun to have them. However, they are going to tell us a little bit about the stories that they love. So let's jump in and have a chat with Tilly, Scout and Fletch.
Okay. Maybe I'll squeak the chair out a little bit and make some room for them to join the table.
And I have a very special friend here with me today. Can you say hello?
Hi.
What's your name?
Matilda.
And how old are you, Matilda?
9.
Excellent. Matilda, what books do you love to read?
I like to read Ella's Diaries and Nevermore.
Nevermore, that's a good book, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there was a book that I bought you the other day. What was that one?
The book that you brought me the other day is Tilda.
Tilda, same name, so you had to get that one.
Yes.
That was good. So what do you love about reading?
I like to explore all of the books and grow my vocabulary and imagination.
That's very good. Vocabulary is a very big word. That's all the words that you know, yeah?
Yeah.
Can you tell us some of your favourite words?
Probably I like to use the word exclaimed a lot.
Ooh, nice.
And yeah, that's just the main word.
That's the main word, yeah. That's the latest one that you remember, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So do you like books about magic, or do you like books about kids doing ordinary things, or a bit of both?
I like them both.
Both? Yeah, good. And do you do reading with your brother and sister?
Sometimes I read Fletcher book, and sometimes Dad and Mum read me books with Scout.
Yeah, that's good. It's always good to have a story before bed, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's nice. Are you reading books at school? Do you have time to read at school?
Yes, in the morning we have 20 minutes of independent reading.
Oh, excellent. And can you bring a book from home to read there?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. And does your school have a library?
We have classroom libraries.
Right. Just some shelves with books in it?
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Nice. And when you're on your holidays, do you have a read sometimes when you're on holiday?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you think Santa might bring you a few books for Christmas?
I think so.
Yes, because we watched The Grinch last night, didn't we?
Yes.
He pinched all the stories,
Yes.
but yeah, that was a bit mean.
Yes.
All right, and what did you tell us your favourite book? I think you did, didn't you?
Yes.
You did. All right, that'll do us. And you're doing a book review for us, aren't you? You're reading How to Survive Your Magical Family by Claire Roden.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and you're up to chapter
11.
Chapter 11, all right. So I read it too. So when you finished, we can have a little chat.
Yes.
Okay, that'll be lovely. Thanks, everybody. We'll say bye for now.
Bye.
So I have two more special guests with me. I have got Fletcher. Say hi, Fletch.
Hi, Fletch.
And how old are you, Fletch?
5.
5, excellent. And I've also got,
Scout.
how old are you, Scout?
8.
8. Ah, did you just have a birthday, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah, so you have to remember you're not 7 anymore.
Yes.
All right. Scooch in here. Come in close.
Hello.
So, Scout, tell me, what is your favourite story at the moment? What are you reading?
Spiderwick.
Oh, the nice Spiderwick Chronicles. I wonder what nice person gave you those. Tell me, what do you love about the Spiderwick Chronicles?
I just love it.
You just love it?
It's just, yeah.
It's just great.
Yeah.
Yeah, love the story. All right. What about you, Fletch? What's your favourite story at the moment?
Bug's Life.
Bug's Life. That's a good story, isn't it?
What about the Smiths and the Smoosh? No. No?
No?
Okay.
All right. What do you like about stories the best? What are your favourite stories? What's in them? Is it magic ones or is it animal ones? Or I think you like dinosaur ones, don't you?
No.
No, you don't like dinosaurs.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
All right, and you have reading time with Mum and Dad at home?
Yeah.
Yeah, they do reading time before bed. It's good fun. What about you, Scary? Do you love reading?
Yeah.
What's your favourite time to do reading?
At bedtime.
At bedtime, nice. Yeah.
Sometimes, only rarely,
Yep.
I read
Chickabella. Chickabella's a
Really?
good story. I heard a really
Really?
good story.
Really?
All right, that's lovely. Thanks very much for telling us what you love to read.
Okay.
We'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye. Bye-bye. I hope you have a nice day. Bye.
So there you have 3 young readers who love to read. And remember, if you are part of the whole Christmas extravaganza that happens in most Western countries at the moment, please think about buying books for Christmas. And you cannot go wrong buying a child a book for Christmas. There are so many great books out there, from picture books through to, early readers, middle grade, YA, all of those kind of things. Buy a book for Christmas.
Yeah, certainly. And of course, buying a book for Christmas, it's a gift that keeps on giving.
Yes.
Because you can always, once you've read the book, it seems to always move, between other people and other people
pass
that
it
will enjoy
on.
it. And
Yep.
so
All
I
those things.
agree.
And just think of the author that you're helping as well. If you buy a book for Christmas, then they can have some Christmas cheer too. Seeing the
Yes,
sales
absolutely.
go up, yeah.
It's always tricky for me to try and promote a horror book or dystopian sci-fi book for Christmas, but anyway. But speaking of books, while I sit here and add a little bit of sugar to a nice strong black coffee, we've got some fantastic new titles on the website. So starting with a book called Boss from Hell by none other than Laurie Bell,
Aha.
who of course was recently in our Writers Lounge. And so this is a fantasy book, and this is described as follows. Starting a new job can be murder. Mig Solder's new place of work is a little odd. Sure, there's unlimited free coffee, but there's also personal messages that seem to have no sender, colleagues that don't seem quite, human, and random emails warning her to run. Now, when she discovers her predecessors didn't quit, they just disappeared, Meg decides to put her obsessive attention to detail to good use and investigate. With the help of her mysterious new neighbour, her spirit-contacting best friend, and her wild grandmothers, Meg uncovers a plot way above her pay grade. And once she starts dabbling in the supernatural, the consequences won't just end in bad performance review, it may just take her life and her soul. So that is Boss from Hell by Laurie Bell, and you'll find that at the top of our fantasy page. So yes, that's cool. Yeah, having just finished a contract back in the office, I can imagine what it must be like to suddenly receive random emails warning myself to run, and I'd probably discover that I sent them from home to remind me that. Now, the next title I'd like to introduce is a science fiction book by author Alexandra Almeida. The book is called Unanimity, which is part of the Spiral Worlds saga. And so, as I mentioned, it's science fiction, and it reads as follows. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Shadow is a reluctant god with a broken mind and a death wish. He used to be Thomas Ashley Byron, an affluent young screenwriter whose creativity and idealism saved the world from the brink of collapse. Together with Henry Nowick, an AI expert, Tom created heaven on earth by inventing a Jungian simulated reality that helps humans confront their dark sides. The benevolent manipulation platform turns the two unelected leaders into beloved gods, but now everything is failing. The world suffers as a sentimental Tom descends into his own personal hell, becoming the embodiment of everything he despises and a shadow of his former self. His journey from an optimistic, joyful Tom to a gloomy shadow is paved with heartache and sinister interference from emerging technology. Humans and bots fight for his heart, but their aims differ. Some want to own it, some to dissect it, and others to end its foolish beat. Estranged from the love of his life, the activist poet Nathan Storm, Tom fails to realise the biggest threat comes from within. None of the sticky stories that steer his life end well. Now, a young goddess, Estelle Nui, has been appointed to replace him. And unlike Shadow, Stella takes no prisoners, and her heart bleeds for no one. Who's pulling on Shadow's heartstrings? Are their intentions malign or benign? It's all a matter of perspective, and Shadow has none left. So, yeah, very, I'll say dystopian,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
Deep dive into some science fiction there. Really like the premise, you know, that concept of artificial intelligence and, you know, the creation of gods and Jungian society. Or I suspect there's going to be a whole lot of symbolic elements twisting and turning within that plot, but it definitely sounds good. So, Unanimity, Spiral Worlds by author Alexandra Almeida, and you can find that obviously under our science fiction genre.
Very good.
Now, to switch from a little bit of dystopian, which I could happily spend a long time in, we're going to go to a little bit of romance. Actually, two romance books. So the first one is by author Jacinta Dietrich, and the book is called This Is Us Now. So Ella and Theo's relationship is young and evolving, and so are they. Their lives are going mostly to plan until a sudden cancer diagnosis changes everything. Nerves about meeting each other's parents and living together turn to anxieties about survival. Easy becomes hard. Hard becomes impossible. Their lives cannot remain the same, and now every moment is coloured by illness and the challenges that come with it. They're faced with the hardest decision. When you feel like you are losing someone you love, do you hold on or do you let go forever? And that book is called This Is Us Now by Jacinta Dietrich under our romance section. It's pretty heavy themes there, and I dare say, you know, quite an exploration to be found within the pages of that one. The next one is another romance, but this is by a romance author, Faye Hall, who has been so kind enough to list some of her fantastic titles on the website. And her latest listing is called Scandalous Behaviour. So Jenny Stewart, an unemployed governess, is looking to escape the rule-abiding town of Inkerman. After the death of her childhood friend, Grace, Jenny takes refuge with several other friends at a beach house, needing to embrace the freedom she so craved, and hopefully find a clue that might lead her to discover who killed her friend and why. John Athling, an estate steward, made many personal sacrifices to get to his position, including distancing himself from the fairer sex and their manipulative ways. His ordered life turns to chaos when he finds the nanny, Grace, dead. Will John and Jenny surrender to their heart's desire, or will they fall victim to the murderer they're chasing before they discover if love at first sight really exists? And that is Scandalous Behaviour by romance author Faye Hall, of course, under our romance section. And Faye is a Queensland writer, so a lot of her work is set in rural Queensland. So, yeah, very, very unique setting, and obviously writes in different time zones, shall we say, or different eras. But yes, so, and fingers crossed we may be talking to Faye soon. But that is just a couple of books that have now been added to the website, so thank you so much to all those for listening to those. And of course, as you mentioned, if you are looking for a Christmas present, why not jump on and grab a copy of a good Australian authored book, whether it's romance you're after, whether it's heavy read, a light read, whether you want to dive into dystopian science fiction, or do you want to find out who's sending those weird emails in an office telling somebody to run. So you'll find them all on Australian Book Lovers, yes. So that is time for me to sit back and enjoy a bit more of my coffee while I think you've got a couple of books to talk about as well.
Yes, I have. Younger children, this is a fabulous middle grade book by Emily Gale. So The Goodbye Year. It's the start of 2020 and Harper is filled with anticipation about being in the final year of Riverlark Primary. She wants a leadership role, the comfort of her friendship group, and to fly under the radar of Riverlark's mean boy. But one by one, things go wrong. When Harper's best friends are made school captains, they are consumed by their roles, while her own role, library captain, is considered second rate. Then something major throws life off course. Her parents take overseas jobs as nurses in a war zone. Harper moves in with Lolly, a grandmother she barely knows, and her 5 pets, vast collections of old trinkets and very different expectations. Just as Harper is getting used to Lolly, the pandemic arrives and her goodbye year is nothing like she'd hoped it would be. Strange things are happening. She wakes up in the night in odd places, fixates on an old army badge that seems to have a mind of its own, and on a visit to the school library during lockdown, she's convinced she's seen a ghost. Who is haunting her? Can she get through the anxiety of the pandemic without her mum and dad? And will Harper find a way to be happy with her goodbye year? So The Goodbye Year explores all the trickiness and confusion of the end of primary school and a new stage of life that looms with all its uncertainties and possibilities. So there you go, The Goodbye Year by Emily Gale. Our second author is Nina Kenwood, and we spent a lot of time talking about her second book, Unnecessary Drama. So the blurb reads, from the author of the much-loved It Sounded Better in My Head, I really love that title, comes a deliciously entertaining new rom-com set in a run-down student sharehouse in Melbourne. 18-year-old Brooke is the kind of friend who not only remembers everyone's birthdays, but also organises the group present, pays for it, and politely chases others for their share. She's the helper, the doer, the guarder of drinks, the minder of bags, the maker of spreadsheets. She's the responsible one who always follows the rules, and she plans to keep it that way during her first year of university. Her new sharehouse is rules light, but no unnecessary drama means no fights, tension or romance between housemates. When one of her housemates turns out to be Jessie, her high school nemesis, Brooke is nervously confident she can handle it. They'll simply, silently endure living together and stay out of each other's way. But it turns out Jessie isn't so easy to ignore. Channeling the screwball comedy of New Girl with an enemies to lovers twist, Unnecessary Drama is a joyful story about leaving home, dealing with the unexpected complications of life, and somehow finding exactly what you need. So, without further ado, and with those 2 fabulous blurbs and all the stories that you've shared as well, let's think about jumping into our author interview.
Absolutely, but and before we do that, you just brought me back. You just sent me on a journey down memory lane. I kind of do remember that not terror, but that really uneasy worry about finishing primary school and thinking, I've got to go to high school now. That was a big one. And I also remember having lots of roommates too, and unnecessary drama is, well, I'm sure that's something we wanted, but I can guarantee it was never achieved. But no, that sounds fantastic, and really looking forward to your interview. So yeah, let's jump into it.
All right, book lovers, we have a double delightful interview for you here. I am absolutely thrilled to say that we have both Emily Gale and Nina Kenwood. I won't say in the same room, although it's a Zoom room, so I think that's all right. So welcome to Australian book lovers, Emily and Nina.
Thank you so much for having us.
You just mentioned that we're here on a lovely Sunday afternoon, and what could be better than talking about books? Emily, I'm going to start with you, if that's all right. So I'm coming to you today, everyone, from Warrarung Country. Whereabouts are you living and working?
I'm in Melbourne on Wurundjeri land, so right by the river. Yeah.
The very, very flowing fast river at the moment because we've had so much water.
Very much changed, yes. But it's actually reached the flood wall, which I've never seen it do before. So, yeah, an extraordinary week.
Yes, absolutely extraordinary week for lots of people in Melbourne. Emily, you've been in the book industry for 25 years, and your website tells me that your writing includes children's books and YA and lots of different things. So what got you into writing? Did you start in writing or did you start in publishing?
Straight out of uni, I managed very luckily to land a job as an editorial assistant at Penguin Books.
Ah, excellent.
So, and I didn't really mean to, I have to say. It was just, well, I did an English degree and always wanted to work with words. But, you know, it was a case of, I live in London, I need a job, I don't live with my parents anymore, what job can I get? And I was just very lucky to land that job in an imprint called Frederick Warne, which is the Peter Rabbit imprint.
Yes.
It was a very good place to learn about the publishing industry. Not terribly glamorous doing Peter Rabbit books, I have to say. But it was sort of the first lesson in you're probably not going to be taken as seriously for the rest of your career because you work in children's books, which is definitely, I think, something that anyone who writes for children and then is sort of aware of the wider landscape becomes aware of, that you're all sort of fighting for your piece of the pie, I suppose.
So why middle grade then? Why children's books for you? Is it that serendipitous job meant that you were interested, or is it something that you've always been?
No, that came later, actually. I first wanted to write young adult literature after reading Jacqueline Moriarty when I was, I think, 25. So her first novel, Feeling Sorry for Celia, I can remember so clearly reading that book and thinking, this is what I want to do. So at the time I lived in London and, you know, hadn't even been to Australia. So, you know, that came much later, that sort of connection. But middle grade, that came from working at readings. So that's where I met Nina as well.
Yes.
So when I finished that job, I was the children's buyer at one of the reading stores. I just knew that I wanted to write for that age group, roughly sort of 9 to 14. I had a really strong sense that that was my readership, that I just loved how still so keen they were on books, that you know, they're at that age where they're very fluently reading. They still have that wonderful childhood sort of enthusiasm for reading. And it reminded me that that's when I became a kind of reader for life, I suppose. And I just wanted to tap back into that age group.
Excellent. Let's switch over to Nina. So Nina Kenwood, award-winning author living in Melbourne. Are you there and on that Wurundjeri country as well today, Nina?
Yes, I am.
Very good. There's a little less about you on the internet. It was a little hard to find. She's a little bit more of a shy.
I'm mysterious. No.
Tell me mysterious. So tell us a little bit.
There's just less to know.
But you've been in the book industry still for 10 years and secretly writing for much longer is what I've
Well, that's an old bio because it's not a secret anymore now that I have a second book out. Yes, so I started out after uni, after a couple of other jobs, I got into publishing and started on the front desk, and then I moved into publicity. I was a publicist, and then into marketing, and then I got a job in marketing, in the marketing team at Readings, and I was at Readings for 8 years, and it was during that time that I wrote my first book.
There you go.
Yeah.
So before or after you met Emily?
After. Oh,
Right.
yes. I wouldn't have written my first book without knowing Em.
That is so good. I need to hear more about that. Tell me.
So Emily and I and Bronte, who is the third member of our writing group, we all met at Readings. And I mean, obviously I was writing. I studied creative writing at uni. I always wanted to be a writer. But I was I had 10 unfinished manuscripts. I would just give up halfway. I hadn't learned the art of finishing the bad first draft. I didn't know how to. I didn't know how to know if something was good enough to keep going. And so starting in this writing group, which was really about less about sharing our work and more about keeping ourselves on track, encouraging each other. We had spreadsheets where we would have word count challenges and to holding each other accountable. And it started out with, I think, a weekly email and then moved to like daily text group chat conversation over the years. But yes, it was through Em and Bronte's support and enthusiasm and feedback that I actually finished a draft of my young adult book, which I ended up entering into the Text Prize, and that became my first book. It sounded better in my head.
Which is such a brilliant title. I absolutely love that. So tell me, let's get specific about the support that they offered. So you're meeting regularly, you've got that accountability, which is absolutely priceless. The feedback was honest. The feedback was poking you along a bit. Tell us a little bit about what it looked like to you.
I distinctly remember giving the first 3 chapters of It Sounded Better in My Head to Em and Bronte, and I hadn't gotten that much, like I'd polished it up, but I hadn't gotten that much further. And I gave it to them, and again, I was in that phase of, well, I'll probably throw this away. And they were both so enthusiastic and had such a great response. And I'd given them work before, and they hadn't had such this was a really enthusiastic response, and it made me, they believed in it before I believed in it, and so it made me believe in the book, and that's how I got sort of to finish.
Excellent. So it felt like it was something worth continuing.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Emily, let's switch over to you. When you were together in this, 3 writers, what did you get from that companionship?
Well, I'm the older, and I suppose I'm the more experienced. And
Yes.
I do feel that, I suppose I feel that pressure sometimes to be terribly wise.
Yes.
And, but I'm not
Well, she is the mentor. She is the mentor figure. When we started, Em was the only published one.
Right.
Yes, and that does come with, a lot of knowledge, and this is what we have to do, and we just have to stay on track. And it also comes with a little bit of cynicism. I mean, you don't publish a few books without sort of picking up a few little cynicisms, I don't think, unless you're very, very lucky indeed. So I do worry sometimes that I'm too cynical in the group, and maybe I'm sort of distressing them before time.
Well, they need to be.
Yeah.
But never cynical about the work.
No.
Not only about the what the realities of being an author, but most importantly, never cynical, never, always perfect about the work.
Oh, well, I just love both of their writing so much. It is just not hard to be enthusiastic in this group about each other's work. And we are just each other's cheerleaders, I think, more than anything else.
And therapists.
And therapists. I mean, we don't really go in for the very heavy critique.
No.
We will be honest, though. I think, I've definitely had some honest feedback from both Nina and Bronte, and they're always right. And I know that, they only have my best interests at heart. And so for them to say anything critical, I know that it's right, because they wouldn't say it unless they really, really felt it. So I trust them. And I think that is an amazing relationship to have in this industry, which is, it's a very competitive industry, obviously. And so to find people that you can absolutely trust is a really amazing thing.
Yes, incredibly precious. Now, tell me, you've been in the book industry for 25 years. I'm going to ask you some old and wise questions here now. How much has changed in that time? What do you think have been the biggest changes in publishing in that time?
To me, it seems like the pressure on the author to be generating a lot of things sort of after the publication. So it didn't seem that way to me. And that maybe I just wasn't close enough at the time. But, to have the social media presence, to, certainly in Australia, you're not going to get reviewed in the newspaper, probably. If you're writing children's fiction, it's very rare, very rare. You've got to be a bit creative yourself with how you present yourself and how you get your work out there. And that seems like maybe the pressure is just growing and has been growing over the last 20, 25 years. But you can't just be an author.
No.
You can't just sit there and write your book and then hand it over and say, that's me done.
Yes.
And I think that's really difficult. I mean, not saying I hate every part of it. I love some parts of it, but I do think it's a difficult balance to strike for everyone. How much time should I be spending doing this? Is this effective? Is anything I'm saying on social media having an effect on sales? So that seems to me the biggest thing.
Yeah, and look, I would certainly have to agree with you, and I'd suspect most underpaid Australian writers out there in particular who do many things, part-time jobs, all those kind of things, school courses, school visiting, etc., as I know that you do, would agree with you. Tell us a little bit about your 10-year view, Nina, in the industry. What have you seen? Because you still do some work with readings, and you can.
I've left readings. I'm back at a publisher now.
I was thinking about local bookshops, because I know that you have been haunting your local bookshops. Do you think that they've changed? Do you think the way they present books or the kind of books that are out and about are different?
In some ways, yes and no. I think obviously bookshops have had to really think and creatively as well, same as authors, about how they reach their customers. And so a lot of that is, they have to be on social media. They have to have, a good working website. Are you selling books online as well? And all of this was then had to be revisited again during the COVID times in Melbourne, especially during lockdowns. They had to reinvent the whole business. Yeah. So it's really, it's similar pressures, I think, to that authors are feeling, in that you have to be, how do you reach your customers? You're competing against, you've got your Amazon, and you're competing against online retailers, but you're also competing against the avalanche of streaming sites and video games and all of that. There's just more and more and more entertainment. There's TikTok, there's social media apps that take up people's time when they could be reading. So you're competing for attention. You're competing with other retailers. You're competing just with so much more of the world as we become more and more connected. So I think that's a huge challenge for retailers in this country.
Yeah. And sadly, the loss of local bookstores is, around the Macedon Ranges. We lost our Gisborne bookstore. We've just lost our bookstore that survived the pandemic in Wood End, but he's had to close. So it's really tough. It is really tough for retailers. Is there still can they be competitive in this market, do you think?
Absolutely, because people still want what a bookseller can give them, a knowledgeable bookseller. Yeah. So there are still parents going, well, I don't know what book to buy for my 3-year-old, my 5-year-old, my 8-year-old. They need those librarians, they need that bookseller knowledge. Yeah. And just being able to browse in a bookstore is a completely different experience than just looking online. And so I think that the space is as valuable as ever. It's just the competition for attention and time.
Okay. And it's so sad to hear of bookshops closing down. It's heartbreaking. But then you do hear of bookshops opening and then, you know, having a couple of great years and they're still going, and you sort of think, okay, well, there is hope then.
There's hope there.
People are opening bookshops.
Please come to somewhere in the Macedon Ranges. Anybody who's looking to open a bookstore, I will continue to buy as many as I can.
Single-handedly.
Single-handedly.
Yeah.
That's it. Tell me, when you get together, are you sharing over a cuppa or are you sharing over a glass of wine? What are your best,
Well,
sources?
the third member of our group moved interstate, so
You deserted us.
we are I would say a very virtual group, in that we are in contact all the time, but it's text messages or a Zoom meeting more than, I mean, Em and I can see each other much more easily, but in terms of the three of us coming together and the COVID lockdowns, I guess that's when things, like, we really got separated in all kinds of ways. It is
But I think because our relationship began as an in real life relationship, you know, at work. And so we were together, you know, all day, and, you know, really became very close in that sort of readings environment. And then just very naturally sort of fell into this relationship where we text each other all the time. It's all, you know, it's like just a text-based support group, and it's very frequent, and it is books, but it's also everything else, you know, as you do with the people who understand you the most. They understand sort of every part of you. And obviously books are just such a huge aspect of our lives, and not one that necessarily everybody else in our life understands.
right.
So once you've got that ticked off, and then you discover, oh, you know, we have this in common and this in common and this in common, and it just becomes a very easy friendship that is also, you know, your main lifeline for you know, book support as well.
And Em and I got to experience something very special this year, which I never would have dreamed of when I was unpublished and we started our writing group, which is we both released a book a month apart with the same publisher, with the same editor.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
So how did that happen?
Well,
Nina was there first.
yeah, I published my first book with text.
Yes. So, yeah, Nina won the text prize with It Sounded Better in My Head. And then I wrote a book with my friend Nova Wheatman.
Yes.
And we took it to text, and they snapped it up in such a lovely, enthusiastic manner that I thought, wow, this is great. You know, text is just one of those publishing houses that you think, oh, one day, you know, I'd love to be published by them. So I was just so delighted at that. And then after that, I managed to sell them a novel just by me, all by myself. And so just by luck, they happened to come out, mine and Nina's, which is Unnecessary Drama, just, you know, a few weeks apart. And I think Nina even saw them in the same bookshop window, sort of not quite side by side, but almost.
Yes, and they've been like sitting side by side on the kids section of the text website. It's very nice. Every time I see them in any way together, it feels very special. And we wrote them around the same, like at the same time we were writing them during the COVID years. Yes, it's kind of been a parallel journey, which has been really nice.
Very good. Let me dive into the books a little bit. Tell us about the inspiration behind the Goodbye Year, Emily.
Well, I can remember very clearly that I'd just finished reading Sick Bay by Nova Wheatman, which has been a huge book for her. And it's set in a school, Sick Bay, where two friends meet. And that was, I think it was 2019. All the years are blurring, but... and my son was in his final year of primary school then. And that seemed like quite, you know, a big year for him, but also a big year for me. Oh, my youngest child is through with primary school. How can I mark this occasion? And I thought, I really want to write a primary school book. And I was volunteering in the school library at his school at the time, which didn't have a librarian. And it hadn't had a librarian the whole time that both my kids had been there. which was the reason I was volunteering. And I thought, well, if this library can't have a librarian, then I shall give it a ghost. And I'll write a story about a school library that is haunted, and a girl who is in her final year of primary is on that cusp, about to make that big leap into high school. And I'll just write about that final year for her, and it's sort of a traditional ghost story, I suppose. And then after I'd written the first draft, I thought, well, I grappled with that question that all writers have been asking themselves: should I include COVID in my book?
Yes.
And I decided yes. So I decided to set the book in 2020 in Melbourne. So I suppose it's got a sort of a framework of COVID, of that year, all of those Melbourne lockdowns. But it's really about all the sort of adventures that she has in between those lockdowns. It's not, it's not just pages and pages of her watching YouTube and looking out the window.
There you go. Tell me, how much do you think, and this is probably a slightly more serious question, go into the COVID part now, how much do you think the lockdowns have affected kids in that final year that didn't get to celebrate their graduation with their friends and those kind of things, and have now even gone into high school with that kind of slightly weird isolation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's affected children of all ages, and I'm not sure how we sort of separate each, year of child in terms of, they had it worse or they had it worse or anything like that. But missing out on those ways of saying goodbye, I think, does stay with you if you didn't have that opportunity to properly say goodbye to a place. Or more so that the year that you were expecting to have was not the year that you had.
Yeah.
And sometimes adjusting to that for some people can be really, really difficult. Obviously, I mean, teachers and parents would be better placed to say how the children who've, sort of been through these hard times the last few years have been affected. Certainly you can see that there is a higher sort of level of anxiety amongst a lot of teenagers at the moment.
Certainly noticed that.
Yeah, and I think that's for all sorts of reasons. I don't think it's just the lockdowns. I think it's hard to say what it is.
There's a lot going on in the world, and children are so much more aware, aren't they?
They're so exposed to everything.
Yeah,
they perhaps feel more responsible for things than they should. Talking about sort of the climate crisis. Teenagers have been taking that on themselves for a number of years in a way that sort of felt lovely at the time when they were taking to the streets and attending protests, and then also now feels like we shouldn't be letting them bear that responsibility. We should be showing them that we've got this.
Yeah.
And that we're doing something. So sorry, gone a bit off track there, but
no.
About all the different things they're dealing with at the moment on top of the pandemic. Yeah.
Is the message in the book hopeful?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
That's good. As I'm reading the blurb, and we'll read that before the interview when we do our episode, but I was hoping that there would be some hope
it's full of hope.
The ghost story. Lovely.
It's absolutely full of hope. Yeah, it's not a really heavy read. She becomes a very sort of strong character within herself. She meets this wonderful ghost, and they have a wonderful friendship during this time. She has great friends who sometimes she has a tricky time with, but ultimately are just lovely young people who are very supportive of each other. And she has this fantastic grandmother who she really gets to know during all these lockdowns, and she goes to live with her. I think she finds a lot of strength through having this quite sort of eccentric but very strong grandmother.
Beautiful. And I must say, I did notice that your partner's 99-year-old gran gave you the most beautiful teacup for your launch. How brilliant was that? I'm a bit of a teacup fanatic, so I saw that.
Yeah,
Great.
Gladys. She is amazing. She's a very sort of steely woman, good sense of humour, but like don't get on her bad side.
Okay.
And she will absolutely shoot from the hip. Like there's no one who can offend you quite like Gladys. But yeah, she gave me this beautiful teacup, and you just these little objects that you put in your stories that come from around your house, and then they become sort of immortalized in your story, and they're sort of special little family things. It was just one of those things. Yeah,
very good. Let's switch over to Nina, to the moving out of home student share house in Melbourne, and having been in a few of those in my time. Tell me a little bit about Unnecessary Drama.
Well, it's a rom-com set during first year uni in a student share house, as we said. It's about Brooke, who is a very type A, organised, very anxious 18-year-old girl who is moving from a small town to Melbourne for her first year of uni. And she's sort of looking forward to starting her life over in shiny new life, sort of leaving a bit of who she was at high school behind. But then she finds out, she thinks she's living with two strangers, but she finds out one of her housemates is Jesse, who is a boy that she was friends with in high school until something happened between them, and then he became her enemy, and now they are living together, and that creates all kinds of tension and drama and humour, and that sort of sets the scene for her first year at uni as well, in terms of finding your feet, living out of home for the first time, and making new friends, and losing those structures of school and your parents and all of that.
It is the book that everyone should be buying for their year 11 and 12.
Okay. It should be mandatory reading, you think?
Absolutely mandatory. It's
handed out with the VCE book.
If your child is leaving primary school, you buy Emily's book. If they're leaving high school,
that's right.
Buy mine.
Children on the cusp of a big change. That's what But I can vouch for it from, so my daughter is in year 12, so she is currently 2 weeks away from her first exam. So she was a voracious reader, and then with high school and all the pressures and whatever, she sort of dropped off. So in year 9, the only book she read out of school was Nina's It Sounded Better in My Head. Then she did not read at all apart from her school books until quite recently, when I suggested she read Unnecessary Drama, which she absolutely devoured in one day, and messaged me to say, I understand why you were laughing so much when you were reading this book. It's brilliant. So definitely, reporting from the true audience of this book, it is hilarious and wonderful.
That is such great feedback. So tell us, Nina, where was the inspiration for Unnecessary Drama?
Well, it sounded a bit in my head, kind of ended with that. It was set in the summer between high school and uni. It ended with that main character moving into a share house. And even though this is not a sequel, none of the same characters, I kind of liked the idea of picking up where I'd left off with the first book in terms of what was to be explored. And I love that, YA is all about firsts, and I love the firsts that come with that end of high school time, the first moving out of home. Not always, not for everyone, but if you live in a small town and you want to go to uni in the city, then you're likely moving out of home. Yeah, the moving out of home, the stepping away from school, the making new friends again. And it's very similar in some ways to that step away from primary school into secondary school. Like that feeling of starting over, and then this is again that the next time that you face that is when you're finishing school. And so I want to explore that time. And I knew it was going to be a rom-com, and I knew that I wanted to have these two characters who had a falling out at school, but I couldn't figure out how to keep bringing them together until I realised, of course, he's going to live in the house with her. Perfect. Solves all my problems. It creates all kinds of problems for my character, which is what you want.
Yeah. Oh, isn't it sad that we have to be so mean to our characters
I know.
to make a good story? Because happy stories don't sell books. Tell me, and I know you've got a page on your website that it's the books that you love as well as
Yes.
your own books. What makes you pick up a book?
That's interesting. Sometimes it's a cover, sometimes it's the author I know, sometimes it's just, you flick through and you read that first few lines and you think, oh, yep, this is a book for me. Like just the writing, the feel. And I'm very driven by what I'm in the mood for. So, I can buy a book that I'll be really excited about and suddenly I'm not in the mood for it. I'll be in the mood for something else. So I like to have a very big TBR pile sitting there to
Yes.
choose from.
What sort of genres do you read? Is it only in your own kind of contemporary rom-com, or do you read widely?
I read fairly widely. I read, a lot of YA, a lot of contemporary adult fiction, rom-coms, literary fiction, more commercial fiction, memoir, non-fiction. I read a lot of picture books because I have a 3-year-old. So reading a lot to her. I try and read as widely as possible. Middle grade where I can. Certainly M and Nova's books are my must-reads. Yeah.
What's your daughter's favourite picture book?
Oh,
What do you have to read over and over?
At the moment we're kind of swinging between a few. When she was really little, it was Where is the Green Sheep? That was the one that we read
classic.
over and over and over. Yeah, that was the one. And now she enjoys going to the bookshelf and picking a different, like 2 or 3 every night. So that's the phase we're in at the moment.
Yeah, lovely. And what are you reading at the moment?
I just finished Sally Rippin's Wild Things, which is about how, I think the subtitle is, bear with me for a second while I grab it, how we learn to read and what can happen if we don't, which is I highly recommend for any parents of a toddler, preschooler or child going into school. It's really, really interesting about how to learn to read, different needs of different children, what happened with Sally and her third son. Yeah, just a really interesting overview of children and reading and the education system.
Fantastic. Good recommendation. Thank you. Emily, over to you. And I don't know if this is a fair question, but of the 6 books that you've got published at the moment, do you have a favourite?
Oh my God. Wow, that is not a fair question. And you know it.
I know.
Okay. When a book first comes out, it's obviously the closest to you because you've just been working in it. You're just handing it over to the world, and it's probably at its most unsullied in your mind in the sense that you haven't, it hasn't been a disaster yet, or you haven't had a million 1-star reviews on Goodreads, nothing terrible has happened yet, and so you can quite safely hold that book close to your heart. And that's my cynicism coming out. But I don't know. In a way, I'm really proud of I Am Out with Lanterns, which was my last young adult book, because I think it's my most ambitious novel, and it was incredibly difficult to pull off. And so I'm proud of myself that I did. I think I did anyway. Yeah, so I don't know. But then there's other books that are much more personal, and every book has a different something about it.
My favourite of yours, I think I have 2 equal favourites, which is obviously The Goodbye Year and also The Other Side of Summer. And I see them as, that's sort of straddling upper, middle grade, lower YA. And I see them as kind of companion books. And what Em does really well is family stuff, emotional stuff. Both those books made me cry a lot. And they both have young female main characters who are separated from their mothers, which is something that really gets me in the feelings. And then have reunion scenes that made me cry a lot on both of them. And I think that the interesting thing about because we both wrote through COVID, and this Em's book is The Goodbye Year has COVID in it, and Unnecessary Drama does not have COVID in it. We both had different anxieties during those COVID lockdown times. And Em, a big part of yours was the separation from your family who were in London. And that you can see that thread in her book with Harper is parents are overseas during COVID, and so she's living, I think, well, I don't know, but like Em so beautifully put her feelings there sort of into the book that way. Whereas I was just a pile of anxiety throughout COVID about lots of different things. I didn't put COVID in my book, but I did make my main character, Brooke, very anxious. So I think I channeled my anxiety into her. Her anxieties are not COVID related, but we were vibrating at the same anxious level. Anyway, I really took things off track there, but
Yeah, it's
all
okay.
of Anne's books are brilliant. All of her books are brilliant. Also, Elsewhere Girls, which she wrote with Nova, has the most amazing research. And even though like you wouldn't, like it doesn't feel like you're a learning book, I learned so much reading that book. I learned a lot about history.
I could have just opened the microphone and said, go to it, both of you, and that would have been fine. Emily, tell me a little bit about the school visits, because I know that they can be fabulous, but they can also be a little testing. What do you like about them?
I've had a really good run of them recently. Actually, there are a couple of things that I find tiring about them, but it's not anything to do with the children. I have a lot of anxiety about public speaking, and how this manifests is not when I'm actually doing the public speaking. I'm fine once I'm doing it, but I don't sleep the night before I'm going to do public speaking. And so when it comes to school visits, I often have had absolutely not a wink of sleep when I walk into that school, which is interesting. And you get through it, and then, the next day it's when you suffer.
Yeah.
I think probably back on the sort of COVID anxiety again, I can keep myself pretty safe at home, working away in my little windowless room up here in my office. And then now that there's no mask mandate at all in schools or anywhere, it does sort of feel like you're running the gauntlet if you've got a month of school visits and you're just trying to keep healthy enough to attend all of them and not get sick. So that was August was a bit hairy, just because if you have to cancel something, then that's the money down the drain. There's no sort of insurance policy. That's it. Just as it was, when the pandemic hit and every author had all their things cancelled, all their festivals, or every appearance, that's gone. There was no safety net for authors in this country. So there's that. But so I mainly would do workshops. I prefer workshops, actually. I like it when the kids are doing something as well.
Yes.
Rather than just a talk. I like to do a workshop. Mainly through sort of year 4, 5, 6, and then also a bit of 9th and 10s, which they do have a bit of a reputation for being difficult.
That's the dark times.
But I haven't found that. I think it's because I've now had, one kid go, she's 18 now, and now my son is 15. I feel like I just know these kids. I know that they're not giving me a dirty look because of anything other than it's 9:30. They should be asleep. No teenager should have to attend school before 11. Let's just change that, and everything would be much easier.
Yes.
And they're just trying to get through the day. That you just can't take anything personally. I think with teenagers. It's not about you. They're just trying to get through life.
I think that is a very healthy way to look at it, for sure.
So I enjoy them. And sometimes you sort of think, is this what I should be doing? Is this a good use of my time? Would I be better off staying at home writing? But it's part of it. It is part of it.
Tell me, what are you reading at the moment?
Right at the minute, I am reading a book called Cut by Susan White, who previously wrote a young adult novel called Take the Shot. But this is an adult novel about being a female surgeon in that very sort of male-dominated industry.
I think I saw the cover of that recently,
Right, and all of the things that you would have to face being in that kind of environment. So it's great. It's a real page turner. So I'm just spending my Sunday just with a page turner and a whole heap of snacks. But just before that, I was reading The Jammer by Nova Weekman. So she's got a book out as well at the moment, which is about roller derby. So I think it's probably the first Australian middle grade novel about roller derby, which is such a huge thing now. I didn't realise, but her son is really into it. And so now she's written this fantastic new novel about it. And just to mention one more, I also just finished The Fell by Sarah Moss, which is another very short, intense novel by her. I really love her work. And it is about a 24-hour period in the UK during one of their lockdowns. So, yeah, it's just a woman cannot stay in her house a moment longer, and she goes out for a walk and gets into trouble.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, it's up on the fell, you know.
Of course, yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's fantastic. Really enjoyed that.
And you read widely? Are these your favourite genres to read, contemporary stories?
I do read widely. I do try and read a lot of middle grade. I sort of feel like, you know, you're part of this community. It's very difficult to get children's books recognised and promoted in this country, not just this country, but certainly this country. And so any little thing that I can do to promote Australian middle grade, I like to do that. So definitely try and keep up with a lot of that. And then, as Nina said, just whatever takes my fancy, and that could be anything, really.
So here's a question for you. I was sent an article about someone who'd written, actually she started on Twitter with a comment that the Marie Kondo folding and neatening and only holding those things with joy. I'm not sure if you know about Marie Kondo. Yes, know that?
Yep. I did the whole craze, bought the book, Marie Kondo.
Yes. But what she suggested is that you do the same with books, that if a book doesn't bring you joy, then you toss it out. I was a bit horrified about that and chatted to a journalist about that and had to be guilty and say, yes, I do Marie Kondo my clothes because that was we had some limited space. So are you book chucker-outers? Are you book hoarders? Or do you gift them to other people? Where do books play a part in your house?
I think
Are you prepared to admit it?
I'm probably more famous for my bookcase than I am for anything else.
Okay, tell us about that.
On Instagram anyway, so I live in an apartment which happens to have double height ceilings. And so I've got this wall in my apartment, which is a floor to ceiling bookcase with two ladders, one of which is a rolling ladder.
Oh, I love that. I made my husband do one for me. As soon as one of my children moved out, I said, right, the bedroom now has become the library and I want a rolling ladder. So excellent.
It's the dream, right?
It is the dream.
So I have got a lot of books. And I would say my policy is if a book has offended me, I might have it out of the house.
Right.
So I don't have to think about it anymore. Although sometimes I dislike a book and I want to remember why I disliked it. And so I keep that.
So it doesn't bring you joy, but it brings a degree of emotion that you want to hang on to.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to... I'm not very good at giving up on books. Sometimes I will, but I've had too many experiences where I didn't like a book. I keep reading it and I'm still not enjoying it. And then suddenly something will happen and I'm loving it. So I always sort of think, wait, maybe that moment is coming. And I just
That's good to be persistent. There are a lot of...
Nina's much better at just going, no, not me.
I DNF all the time, constantly.
Right.
Since I had my daughter, I was like, time is much more precious.
Yes.
But I often will put a book down knowing like, this is good. I'm just not in the mood for it, but I will revisit it and I will rediscover them and love them later. So I have a lot of books that I have stopped and started, but I'm keeping for some mysterious date in the future when they'll be helpful to me. Yes, I did just move house, so I got rid of, I didn't throw books away, but I gave them a lot away. Just that's when you really start going, why do I have this book? When you're looking at 50 cardboard boxes of books that you've got to lift and pack and then unpack, you start thinking, well, maybe this book that I didn't read 3 years ago, I don't need to hold on to. But I have a lot of books. I love books. I love being surrounded by books. And it's really important to be able, for me, I like to be able to just pick up. I have a bookshelf that I keep nearest my desk, which is my inspiration books, which I like to just be able to pick up a book and read a couple of lines and just sort of breathe in the good writing that can then reset my brain into hopefully writing better.
That's great. Tell me about your writing process or your routine, Nina. If you've got those books behind you, what else helps you get writing?
I used to. Well, I wrote my first book. I was working full time, but I did not have a child. I had no expectations on my time at all outside of work, and so I would have whole lovely weekends where I would just write. And so I would have get into the mood. It would take me hours to get in the mood and get everything right. And, I'd watch bits of things to inspire me and that was all lovely. But now I wrote the second book with around a toddler. And so every bit of time that she was at daycare, that was my writing time, was precious. So it's just straight in, no wasting time. I mean, the only essential is coffee and a comfortable chair.
Fair enough. So it could be all over the house, or it was just, open the laptop, begin.
I do have a set desk space.
Okay. So you've got a space that feels like this is where you do your writing.
Yep.
Okay.
That's right.
Plotter or pantser? Somewhere in between.
I have what I call a draft zero, which is where I am trying to find the character's voice most of all, and just characters, the main character's voice, because I'm writing YA. My first books are YA, first person, very kind of voicey, a lot of internal dialogue. That's what I'm really trying to get right. I'm trying to discover the character, get the voice right, get all of her sort of thinking on all kinds of things. And so I'll just write random scenes, characters can come and go, and then I'll have this messy draft zero, which is nothing, like there's no plot. And then I kind of have to figure out the plot and everything else on top of that. But once I have the voice, that's like the backbone, the skeleton. And so that's kind of what has happened with both my books. But I am trying to get better at planning, definitely.
It's tricky because sometimes you feel it can sort of curb your creativity. Yes. Yeah, but it's somewhere in between.
Loose planning.
Loose planning is good. Okay. What is the best piece of advice, writing advice, that you were given or that you've been given? Yeah. Doesn't have to be back in the day. It can be recent.
The best one is, you hear it all the time, which is like finish the draft, finish the thing. That was, for me, that was the one I needed to get through the most. To stop, reading. Like I'm reading books about writing and I'm listening to writing podcasts. And sometimes it's like, okay, no, you just need words on the page. You need to just write it, and it doesn't matter that it's terrible. And you really learn how many drafts, because sometimes in the early days I would think, if it's going well, it's like, okay, well, this is good. This is good. I won't have to do much work on this later. And of course you do. I do 9-10 drafts.
Yes.
You need to finish the draft and then be prepared for how much work there still is to go.
Yes, that is the work of the writer, isn't it? That first draft is nothing.
And not be put off. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
All right. Emily, what is your writing goal for the next 12 months with 6 books and this book delightfully just published? What's on your to-do list?
Well, I'm working on another time slip novel with Nova Wheatman.
Excellent.
So that is fully in progress, and having a fantastic time writing that with her again. So that's the priority. And then I've got sort of a few unfinished things on secret things.
Okay, you don't have to share. No spoilers. That's fine.
A few things that I'm really hoping to finish, just as one of those career goals that not necessarily going to become anything, but just for me, I would like to finish them. yeah, but that's the priority is the book with Nova. So yeah.
Okay. How do you arrange the co-authoring, the back and forth of who does which bit when?
Well, we write a character each, so we've got that sort of divided, I suppose. We do the research together, and we roughly plot together, usually in the State Library, where we like to sort of meet up and do a lot of work and then go and eat dumplings somewhere. That's our little routine.
I love Melbourne.
Yeah, but then once we've sort of done the rough plot, we just send each other a chapter at a time. And so the book gradually builds, a bit like sort of having a pen pal. So that it's this wonderful feeling, because you send yours off and you get great feedback. Oh, I loved it. And then you get a chapter back and it's brand new to you. But you also know, but this is in my book. And
I didn't have to write it.
And then the book sort of builds, quicker than it would if you're on your own, and you feel supported. You don't feel like, that there's a sort of loneliness to writing. Sometimes you don't feel that. You can have your bad days where, like I said to Nova the other day, all of my bits are rubbish and all of your bits are great. Oh God, she's spiraling. Okay.
Yep. Time for dumplings. Let's leave the work.
Exactly. So it's really different, a really different experience.
Yeah. So tell me what words of advice you would give to an aspiring author.
Ooh. I would definitely say don't be afraid of that big redraft. Don't get too attached to the first draft. I work as an editor, so I do a lot of manuscript assessments, and often people will come to me saying, I've been rejected X number of times, but they don't really go into why, and now I'm really stuck. I don't know what to do. So I will then give them pages and pages of, this is where I think you've got some weaknesses. This is where you could change things, blah, blah, blah. And I think they're often very surprised that so much needs to change. Yeah. But if you're being rejected that many times, there's probably something that's not quite working. Whether it's that the voice isn't distinctive, or the resolution just isn't right, or any of those things that you would like to get the feedback from the actual publisher, but you're not going to, because there's just too many going out there. So I do sometimes sense a reluctance to get back in and really dig deep into that manuscript and find another way. Which I understand, obviously, you've just spent so long writing, 50 to 80,000 words or however long it is. But really, this is the business of rewriting.
As you said, that first draft is just the beginning.
Yep. Yeah.
Good advice. Okay, Nina, why should people read unnecessary drama?
Because it's hilarious.
That's as good as any yes.
Honestly, and if anyone does read unnecessary drama and wants to just talk to me about the cafe scene, my email is open. Just honestly, it's the most hilarious scene in a book, and I feel like there should be a support group for people who just want to talk about the cafe scene. Okay, just dropping that.
They need to have
my publicist. Yes, I think it's a nice book if you are looking for an escapist read, a rom-com, a beach read this summer. If you have a teenager who is on Book Talk and they are looking for a rom-com or a romance, but actually you don't want them to read anything that is unsuitable, or you want to steer them gently away from maybe some of the more adult content that they are seeing on there. But I think that this would be a good book for them, especially because it's still mature, it's still they're in uni, but it is perfectly suitable in terms of the content for anyone aged 13 and up, I would say. And I think it's still fun for adults to read, of course, as well.
Excellent. Where can people find you and your books on the media, on the social media?
I'm on Twitter, sort of, and Instagram. I'm not as prolific as Em, but I am there under my name and my website. It's all very easy to find. And my book is in all good bookshops. You find links. There's various to buy links. There's signed copies floating around at the moment.
Yes, I saw that you'd done the rounds of your local bookshops and signed a few.
Yes.
Good on you.
And Booktopia and Readings both have signed copies if you want to order online. Yeah, it's out there. It should be pretty easy to find. Excellent.
And may, in fact, be next to the books with Emily Gale, The Goodbye Year. So, Emily, tell us why should, and I guess it's mostly going to be parents, buy this book for their middle graders?
Well, I think any child who loves a ghost story with a bit of history to it will enjoy it. And I think also for kids to feel seen in terms of their experience of lockdowns and COVID generally, to feel seen when it comes to those sort of tensions about leaving primary school, friendship tensions, puberty also gets a big mention in the Goodbye Year. Yeah, just that time of your life where you're not quite a teenager, but you're certainly beginning to experience all those sort of testing times and tricky times. So yeah, I hope that kids will love it. Yeah.
It seems to have some very good first reader responses, so that's fantastic. And you've already got Nina Kenwood saying how fabulous it is, so what more could you ask for?
That's all I need.
Tell me, where can people find you on the internet?
Oh, always rabbiting on Twitter, that's for sure. So at Emily Gale, very mysteriously on Twitter. Instagram, if you want to see my bookcase, it's at Emily Gale Books, etc. And I have a website, emilygalebooks.com, and I think that's just about enough social media from me.
Sounds like you're both reasonably easily accessible and doing the post reading and the post writing and editing work very well. Thank you both very much for giving up some time on your Sunday afternoon to share your stories, and delighted that you could both support each other during the process. And I just love that you both have a book out a month apart, same editor, same publisher. It is absolutely meant to be.
Well, thanks so much for giving us this opportunity to talk.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Yeah, we don't really get the opportunity to, we talk to each other all the time, but we don't usually get the opportunity to do it to an audience. So it's been really lovely. Thanks, Veronica.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Right. Thanks, everybody. Stay tuned for a bit more. So there you are, Emily and Nina, Emily Gale, Nina Kenwood. Thank you so much for, spending the time really to give up your Sunday afternoon to have a lovely chat. It was so comfortable. It was so friendly. And thank you to Text Publishing for picking up these two fabulous authors and sharing them with us.
Yeah,
love
huge
that they
thank
met
you
at readings.
to Emily and Nina. Yeah, thanks so much for being part of the show.
Yeah. Supporting from other writers, believing in each other, and really just that comment, I think, from both the authors, that authors have to do more these days, which is why we get such a lovely chance to chat with their authors and share some of their work on the podcast. But yeah, it's not just writing a book anymore.
No, and I think, we've brought it up many a time, but the whole idea of writing a book is such a solitary, usually it's solitary, well, at least putting the words on the page is definitely a solitary exercise. So, and it's easy to just, look, not everybody is a writer. So, for example, you might love writing and you might not have people in your immediate friends and family that are able to have that conversation and chat about, syntax and verbs and adverbs and, why the comma becomes such a monster when you start, all those things. So I think it is a nice opportunity when you can meet other writers, whichever medium. We've got some fantastic technology available to us now. And I mean, obviously, we found each other on Twitter and that led to a book writing book together, and it's led to Australian Book Lovers. So, collaboration, I think, can be such a beautiful thing. And it's also an opportunity to just do something different, do something
Yeah.
outside of your comfort zone, try something new, but not only step out of your comfort zone, but you're doing it with the support of somebody else. And, whether it's 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, but just that idea of trying to lift each other up, I think it's a beautiful thing.
And particularly during COVID, I mean, there's, lots of downers, but I think there were also lots of positives as well.
I think so. And I think, we talked briefly off air about that, but there's been a lot of negative, or let's just say a lot of perhaps unwanted change or uncomfortable changes that have taken place during COVID. Not to say that COVID's come to an end, of course, or we're not seeing, the static, things are still evolving as we speak, but there's also, at some point there's a time to possibly look back and see if there are some real positive things that have come out of it too.
Yeah.
If you've come out with a new story that you've written or a new book that you've read and loved, if you've made a new friend, if you've discovered a little bit more about yourself, if you did a little bit of learning, whatever it might be, there's hopefully, I think if we all dig down, we could hopefully find a few positive things that come out of it. And fingers crossed, a whole lot more positive things to come.
Yeah. And look, it's interesting. Some of the medical profession are doing some research about some of the positives that have come out there, which is probably a story for another day because I'll get too carried away with the science of it. I thought it would be helpful for our listeners to know the difference between an alpha reader, a beta reader, and a critique partner, and think about what it is that you might need if you are, in fact, a writer, or if you hear writers talking about these. So this is from a very helpful blog by Hannah Bowman, who is an American editor, author, and writing coach. So she wrote in August 2021, and her website is btleeditorial.com, so have a bit of a look there. Alpha readers are one of the earliest readers of your work. In fact, they typically read as you draft, or they see the very first unedited draft of your manuscript when it's still very raw. And rather than provide reader and market feedback, their goal is to provide feedback and look for general story issues like awkward dialogue, plot holes, and incomplete characterization. So these are the kind of things that you would have in your very first draft, where you've just kind of, blurted everything out on the page, even if you are a plotter, as many people like to have their outlines and just do exactly what they say. Often stories will tend to find a life of their own. So that's your alpha reader, and that's the barely edited or the first draft. Then you have beta readers. So they come, of course, after alpha readers. And these are people who read your manuscript once you've done some revisions. And their questions are going to be less involved than an alpha's, more like big picture questions that your ideal reader might have. And it's a great way to get feedback before sending your book to your editor, before querying agents. So theirs will be more big picture. Did you find the character arc useful, or did the plot seem to flow along? Was it too did we give too much away too early, or did you really want to keep reading? All of those things. And have we dealt with kind of social issues, and was there enough background, or was there too much? All of those kind of things your beta readers will help you with. And then finally, critique partners. So they're often called CPs, and while they're similar to alpha readers, they aren't necessarily reading your unedited draft or following you closely as you write. Instead, you might swap semi-revised manuscripts with each other, and they're always other writers, and you're helping each other iron out snags in your respective manuscripts. Or if you get to a block and I don't quite know what to do with this character, or I've found this, they are more likely to offer you some really practical advice from an author's point of view about what you can do, and that is generally in exchange for you doing the same for them. So there you go. And of course, where do you find them? They're often, lots of people willing to volunteer, and you'll generally find them social media, internet, Instagram, Twitter are really helpful. The writing community on Twitter is very helpful. As you say, we found each other on Twitter. Facebook groups dedicated to that. There's a website called Critique Match that you can have a look. Goodreads often has some of those groups there. So yeah, there you go. Think about those alpha, beta, and critique partners. Yeah,
and I was just thinking while you were explaining those definitions, an interesting way to sort of get an idea of, how many processes, that journey it can take. But you can use it, take music, for example. Like if you could find, and often you can now on YouTube or on the internet, think of a favourite song. See if you can find the original rough recording, when it was just an idea and just recorded live in the room or something, and then hear the final version. And, there's so many changes that have gone through it, and your chorus might be different, the lyrics change, the tempo changes, so many different things. So it's almost like a completely different song by the end of it. And of course, you've got your production as well. So the sound is completely different. But, it's very similar to the writing of a book, isn't it? That initial draft is literally the idea on the page. It's people that are kind enough to read your book at different stages are just going to give you a wealth of feedback and information. And I think it's a really nice process. So there's a lot that goes into things before you get that final book in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Stacks. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And that's let alone all the work that you do on it yourself.
Exactly. Well, in the case of, the lovely ladies who are just part of the conversation, collaboration can certainly help with things like this.
Yeah. And look, they were lucky enough to find each other working at the Readings bookstore, and away they went. But, just be open to, finding the right people out there. Your people will be there. And look, criticism as such can be really hard to digest, but it is generally going to make your book better, but it is always your story in the end. So you can take or leave the feedback, but if you're getting sort of consistent feedback from several places about a particular thing that you're doing, it might be worth having a look and just throwing out, kill your little darlings and start again for that little bit.
Speaking of collaborations and for discovering other people, how about we step into the Writers' Lounge and maybe catch up with somebody? If I can make it to the bar, let's see. It depends on the journey down the stairs. But
Indeed. All right, so away we go. Book lovers, do we have a treat in the Writers' Lounge? Today I have arranged to meet one of our favourite authors, Sandy Barker. G'day, Sandy.
Oh, g'day, V. It's really lovely to be here, and that's very nice to hear that I'm one of your favourites.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's very, very good company that I'm in. Thank you so much for having me back.
You are indeed fine. Now, you're indeed welcome. You are fine. Let me start that again. Where are you tonight in the wine bar? What kind of wine bar would you have, and what would you be drinking?
There's no imagining this at the moment, V. I'm actually having something from Tarbilk. We went up to Tarbilk before the floods, and we loved them. They were gorgeous people, just up about an hour out of Melbourne.
Yes,
and just a beautiful winery, fantastic wines. I'm sorry, I'm not being paid sponsorship at all.
No, that's okay. We used to go there in the olden days when we were young, before children, so that's probably 35 years ago. They are great wines.
Yeah, it's one of the first family wines.
Yeah.
So when Tarbilk, I think it's called Tarbilk. I call it Tarbilk because I'm a troglodyte. But anyway, but when the floods happened, we were, how can we support these communities other than just, so they were offering lots of wine, and we bought like 3 cases.
Okay, then that's a good wine. Yeah. So red or white is your fave?
It's red. It's a red. It's a red blend. It's a really nice. It's lovely.
Beautiful. And, I've read several stories about there being a glut of red wine about, so I'm doing my best to do that as well. I don't currently have one with me, but I did have a really lovely Tempranillo the other day. Do you think I can remember who it was? But it was nice. Not something I usually drink, but my niece said, hey, let's try this with whatever we were having. And, that was delicious. So
brilliant.
Very
brilliant.
Nice.
And, we don't make bad wine in Australia, you can't go wrong.
Exactly. And not only that, but we also have brilliant authors, of which you are one.
Oh, that's very nice. Thank you.
And we're here to talk about your latest release, which is book number 8.
It is.
Yes, and it is called, which is just fantastic. And it's The Christmas Trip. And I must say that I absolutely love the cover, because it is the perfect reflection of the snowy European northern winter Christmas versus, I'm going to say, usually the sunshine on the beach Australian Christmas.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, It just came out about 3 weeks ago, and I've just cracked 100 reviews on Amazon, which is very nice. It's a little bit of a mini milestone, so it's very well received, and it's really strange actually, because my author copies arrived a couple of days ago. I did a little video, and then I took a photo of all my books on the shelf, and I'm like, oh goodness, I have to off one of my favourite authors from the shelf now because
you've got too many of your own.
There's too many of my own. I'm like, sorry, Lindsay Kellogg, I love you, but you're going to have to move to the back now.
Or you could, in fact, get a whole new shelf, a whole new bookcase just for you.
No, I know. People do. I see it when they put all their author copies of the same book up, and I'm like, it looks like a bookshop. It's so pretty. But yeah, I'm just, I've given myself a cube. One of the cubes in the shelf unit.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Now tell me, the Christmas trip is actually book 2 in the Christmas romance series. So we're back with Chloe, Jules and Lucy. So tell us a little bit about where they go for this book.
Yeah, so when I wrote the Christmas Swap, which came out in 2020, I didn't really plan on writing a sequel. I gave them their happy for nows and let our readers decide, what happens with all of these romances. It was a very happy, positive, uplifting kind of an ending. Sorry, no spoilers, but I do write romance, everybody. So
yes. So, it has to be happily ever after or happy for now. That is the rules.
Exactly. Yeah. But then I had a lot of readers. That was quite a popular book, actually. I was, I was really chuffed with how well it was received around the world. And for anyone who hasn't read it, it's set in the UK, the US, and in Australia. So it kind of had a little something for everybody.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, what are the girls doing now? So even though it's 2 years later in our real world, it's actually just a year later for them. So Lucy, who is the Brit, is still living in London, and she's in a long-distance relationship with Will, who lives in Colorado. And she's winging her way to spend another cold Christmas in Colorado, and she's feeling a little bit down about their relationship, feeling like it might be a little one-sided. And then we've got Jules, and Jules is now living in Melbourne. She's sharing a flat with Ash, who was Chloe's roommate. And she and Matt get a special invitation from Archer. Now, Archer and Chloe just had a whirlwind year making a movie that we talk about in book 1. And they're living in LA, and Archer is going to whisk her off to Paris for Christmas. How romantic. Paris in Christmas, except a volcano explodes over in Iceland, and there's an ash cloud over Europe. No one's in or out. So I know. I hate when that happens. But it happens in chapter 1 or chapter 2. Remember? So it happens very early on, so we know that that's happening. But what he decides to do is the next best thing for the Christmas, to make it special for Chloe, because he's madly in love with her, is to bring her best friends all together, and he decides that he'll take them all to Hawaii, and he's going to surprise them. So he calls Jules and Matt in Melbourne and says, come to Hawaii, and they're like, okay, don't tell Chloe. And then, Lucy lands in Colorado, and Will's already spoken to Archer and says, we're going to Hawaii. And she's like, I packed for the snow. So anyway, all 6 of them end up in Hawaii. And I haven't actually had Christmas in Hawaii, but I've been there a few times. And I have had Christmas in Mexico. So I have had a nice hot tropical type of Christmas where... you just kind of lean into the cultural differences and have a nice time. So, yeah, it was really, really fun to write that story and to bring them all together because, of course, in the Christmas Swap, they're all in different countries. So, yeah that's kind of what it was. And of course, mayhem ensues because that's the fun of writing a rom-com. And we've got some new characters, and it's really quite sweet and really fun to have kind of the girls all together. So that's what it's about.
What about your Christmas? What are your Christmas traditions?
Well, it's funny.
Can you remember that it's coming?
I know. It's bananas. I can't believe it's already here.
Yeah.
So I have an American mother and a British father. So I was raised with Christmas traditions from both, and then my mum is American but was raised in Germany. So we have, we have like a beautiful mix. So we have, she's really, really into Christmas. Like she's like phenomenally into Christmas. So even though it's, hot down here and she lives in Western Australia, she'll, put snow on the windows, the fake snow and everything. She's really into Christmas, and most of my family is, my dad on the outside family, we're really into Christmas. So gifts, we still exchange gifts, and we still put up the tree, and we love stockings. Stockings are super fun, lots of little trinkets and goodies. We have champagne in the morning, but, and we have Christmas cookies from everywhere. And we'll still do a proper cooked lunch, even though it might be 40 degrees.
I know. It's insane. But yes, this is true. We just can't bring ourselves quite to go the seafood route. But yeah. Well, we might do a bit of both. So if I'm down at my dad's, we might have a seafood platter for breakfast. And then we have the full cooked lunch at dinner. And it's like, it's just super fun. And then, of course, my partner's American. So, we've had traditions come in from his family. And I'm trying to learn these new recipes, and they're so tricky. They're so tricky. Like steamed cranberry pudding is so hard. I've never once got it right, but he's very patient with me. He's very sweet. Very good. Very good. He could always do it, himself. He could surprise you.
Yeah. It's kind of a Grandma Ellie thing. So.
Very good.
I know. I've never quite got to her standard, but lots of baking and just lots of family, friends, the friends that you choose as family. Just get everybody together and try to surprise each other. I'm known as a good gift giver.
Very good. So thoughtful about your gifts. That's excellent. Yeah.
So I can usually surprise people. But my best friend Lindsay, she's like the best gift giver ever. If her gifts typically induce tears. You open and you're like, I never knew I always needed or wanted this. She's
That's
so
fantastic.
thoughtful. I aspire to be as good as her. Anyway, what are you up to for Chrissy?
So probably similar, except the family are half vegetarian, so we do a beautiful cranberry nut loaf. Thank you. I think it's a Jamie Oliver one, and we do his vegan gravy. So thank you, with Paul Kelly singing in the background.
Gorgeous.
And the meat eaters have the hot meal and that kind of thing. The kids eat I say kids, they're in their 20s and 30s. They eat chocolate for breakfast. So there's no such thing as Christmas breakfast. It's purely chocolate out of the stocking.
Love it.
We do an evening the night before Christmas Eve is family and friends, and we walk around our little village up here in the Macedon Ranges. We do lanterns, which is candles in brown paper bags, and all the streets are lit up, and the kids just walk around, and it's just fantastic. And you take a glass of wine and say hello to your neighbours, and it is very beautiful. So
magical.
We love Christmas.
That's magical.
It
How
is
beautiful.
It is.
I like that Norwegian tradition of giving a book on Christmas Eve. Everyone gets a book, and then you just sit around and you drink wine and you read
your book. And what better book to buy than The Christmas Trip? Did you see how I segued there really nicely?
Yes, nice. That was beautiful.
But if you want to see where the ladies start, of course, then you have to go to book one, which is The Christmas Swap. So if you want a Christmas romance, The Christmas Swap or The Christmas Trip, and of course Sandy has 6 other books in her holiday romance because she's a lovely travel blogger, and you've got Off the Beaten Track with Sandy Barker. So where is the best spot to buy, either for themselves or to get 6 copies for their friends? Where would you suggest people go to, Sandy?
Well, the print book comes out next week, so pretty much any of your major retailers. I was in Dimmock's in Sydney last week, and so they'll probably have them anywhere where you get your books. Just kind of contact them and say order them online and pre-order. And if you prefer e-books, it's available on all platforms. But if you go to sandybarker.com, you can find all the links to buy.
And you are absolutely going gangbusters, because I've just had a look at One Summer in Santorini, which was your first book, and you've got on Goodreads 3,160 ratings. That is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And that's just brilliant. And that was only 2017, so it's like barely 5 years.
2019, actually. It's been out for 3.5 years.
First published.
Very grateful. I saw from my royalty statements that I think I've sold like 70,000 copies of that book now. So it's really, really lovely that people just want to escape. They still do, I had a colleague say today, she was up in Fiji and she said, I read your first book and it was, super fun and it was a really nice holiday read. So it's a bit of escapism.
Yes.
I write the heart. So there's often a little, a little bit of a tear or here or there, but hopefully a laugh as well. So.
Yes. Yeah. And it always has to end up well. So just remember that.
Yeah.
Anyone who's not sure, but it's got to be there. Sandy, thanks for sharing about the Christmas trip and the Christmas swap and all of your beautiful stories that are out in the world. And thank you so much for supporting Australian book lovers and having all of your books, listing them with us, which is just brilliant. So good luck with the next release, and we should stay tuned early in the new year for some really more exciting news from Sandy Barker.
Yes. I can't really say much now, but it's
nothing.
It's the next kind of, the next chapter of my life. So I'm very excited about what's to come. Watch the space. Keep an eye on the socials. I'm not leaving Twitter yet.
No, neither am I. Hanging in there
into the ground yet.
The writing community is still out there, isn't it?
We are. Yeah. We can just ignore all the rest of the riffraff.
Exactly. Very good, Sandy. Thank you once again. Finish a glass of wine. I am going to go and get my glass of wine. And thanks for dropping into the Writers' Lounge.
It's been brilliant. Thanks so much, Faye, and Merry Christmas to you and yours.
Thank you, and same to you. Take care.
Bye.
So thank you again to Sandy Barker, a fabulous rom-com author who is one of our earlier supporters, and it's delightful to see that she's got another book out, which is brilliant. And
Absolutely
with the Christmas feel, we've been talking about buying books for Christmas, away you go.
Well, away you go. It kind of fits perfectly, doesn't it? Considering Sandra is a romance travel writer. So away you go. She'll take you in lots of different places by just jumping into her pages.
Yeah. And it's time now, of course, we've been very friendly on this episode, to think about a quote.
Indeed it is. I know I've got a quote, obviously, and I've based mine on collaboration. What about yourself?
Well, I based mine on friendship, so we're pretty good. All right. Here is mine on friendship from Catherine Mansfield. So Catherine Mansfield Murray was, in fact, of course, a New Zealand writer, essayist and journalist, widely considered one of the most influential and important authors of the modernist movement. Her works are celebrated across the world and have been published in 25 languages. So that's pretty damn good. Thank you, Catherine Mansfield. For these words, I always felt that the great high privilege, relief and comfort of friendship was that one had to explain nothing.
Ah, yes. And I think that's kind of bleeds into that other definition of, the silence. You can sit with your friend and just sit in silence, and it's not an awkward silence at all. It's just a beautiful silence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, what a beautiful quote.
Yeah.
Well, my quote comes from Mr. Charles Darwin, of all the people. So his quote, I kind of like it. So it reads as follows. It is the long history of humankind, and animal kind too, those who learn to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed.
Ah, yes. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that is, in fact, part of his work around lots of people misquoting him, saying that it's survival of the fittest, whereas in fact, as you've just said, he says collaboration and community and supporting each other are really the way that the human race will survive. So more kindness, more collaboration in the world, people.
Definitely, I agree. Yes, I think it's a funny thing, the survival of fitness, because really, obviously there's a million things that go into it, but it's accidental sometimes changes that can become a benefit within an effective I guess, society, if it is a social animal. Sometimes. So, yeah, everything plays a part, but definitely collaboration is always going to be an important part. Yeah. Unless, you're a lone wolf or something, like a lone animal. But
there's a place for everyone, indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Now, just before we go on. What were you going to say, Bush?
I was going to say, it's almost time for our tagline.
It is almost, but first I want to say that stay tuned after the tagline for a book review by our fabulous guest reviewer, Naomi Shippen, who is reviewing The Christmas Swap and The Christmas Trip by Sandy Barker. So, yeah,
well, there we go. Excellent.
And, of course, next interview we have, I was absolutely delighted to be able to chat with Petronella McGovern, one of Australia's foremost female crime writers. So, yeah. So we have a copy of Petronella's book, The Liars, and of Chris Hammer's The Tilt, ready to, they're in the process of being given away to our newsletter subscribers. So if you want to be in the run for our future ones, which I've got 10,000 Aftershocks by Michelle Tom, plus some other surprise giveaways, jump on to australianbooklovers.com/booklovers and subscribe to our very irregular newsletter. But you will always have a chance to win a book. So there you go.
I think the opportunity to win a couple of crime books it's awesome. I love the crime book, and how lucky has Australian Book Lovers been to been able to chat with Chris and now Petronella. This is amazing.
Yeah, it was really good. And Emily and Nina, I just love talking to creative people, and authors are just so excited to talk about their work, and I love hearing a little bit more about the human being behind the words. So it's great.
Yes, authors growing up were always mysterious people, really, weren't they? There wasn't the media presence of authors as there are today. So it's a pretty cool thing to be able to, now I can click a button and basically find an interview with most authors and learn from them, and delve into their minds and get inspired, or maybe learn some tricks and some advice. So yeah, it's as crazy as the world is, as upside down as it is, and as potentially dangerous as it's becoming, it's also got some really cool things about it too. So.
Yeah. All right, tagline.
Yes,
don't forget, people, if you love Australian Book Lovers, jump on the website, have a look at all the fabulous books that are there being listed by Australian authors, and enjoy the podcast. Give us clicks or likes or stars or whatever podcasting platform you work on. And tagline, Darren.
Well, I know we had a bit of a brief chat about it. So, talking about changing from primary school to high school, how about last classroom bell of the year, maybe? And a little bit of chaos. We're going to be excited, and we're going to be shouting, and let's be a kid again for a moment.
All right, bring it on.
Okay, here we go. I don't know how we're going to do this, but once again, our Academy Award acting skills are going to be turned on, just like, because it's so easy to do. We're such good actors.
Lucky we're writers.
Trump then. All right, here we go.
And Veronica, we got to remember too.
Oh, can't wait.
Yeah. Let's remember to read.
More.
Aussie.
Books. Hooray!
Okay. Maybe I'm better as an adult. Well, actually, and there's a furphy, because, ladies and gentlemen, I'm far from an adult. Thank you so much for listening to episode 72.
Yes.
And until the next one, take care.
Bye for now.
Hi, I'm Naomi Shippen. Stories have always been an important part of my life, but it was not until recent years that I began writing my own. Mystery, suspense, and domestic noir hold a special fascination for me, and my debut novel, Safe from Harm, will be coming out in 2023. It's a psychological thriller set in the Victorian high country of Australia. You can find out more about my writing on my website, naomishippen.com, or you can follow me on social media on Twitter at Naomi Shippen, Instagram at naomi.shippen.writes, or Facebook at nshippen. Today I would like to review The Christmas Swap and The Christmas Trip by romance author Sandy Barker. The Christmas Swap follows the lives of three teenage girls who meet in Maui and grow up to swap Christmases across continents decades later. Dubbed the May Ladies because they share the same birthday month, the girls remain lifelong friends with time and distance no barrier to their close friendship. While the 30-somethings have interesting careers, financial independence and great friends and family, what they really want for Christmas is a special someone to share their lives with. The Christmas trip sees the May Ladies reunite once more, but this time they're all together in Hawaii with their significant others. Sharing a sprawling mansion complete with infinity pool, clifftop views and an on-site local chef who plies them with traditional cuisine and cocktails, the gang hunkers down for a Christmas that is full of surprises. Secret desires, misunderstandings and the appearance of some troublesome interlopers are just some of the challenges the couples face as they come together at this most significant time of year. I have read all the novels in Sandy Barker's holiday romance series, and they are always a delight. Her humour, optimism and adventurous spirit come to life in stories that celebrate fun, friendship and, of course, romance. Her evocative descriptions of mouth-watering food, beautiful scenery and the intoxicating feeling of falling in love are an absolute joy to read. The Christmas Swap and the Christmas Trip go together well, or can just as easily be read as standalone novels. They are perfect for getting you into the holiday spirit and would make great Christmas presents, even for yourself.
Let's meet again. Where magic happens.
Australian Book Lovers acknowledges First Nations peoples and recognises their continuous connection to country, community and to culture. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and honour the sharing of traditional stories passed down through generations. We're committed to a safe and inclusive welcome for authors and readers of all cultures and backgrounds, including people of LGBTQIA+ communities and their families.